Good morning once again. And we are representing Group 4 as delegated by, let me remove my cap so that you can see me clearly. I was one of students 12 a decade ago, and I still remain a student. So we are presenting on topic number 4, building the business case for sustainable procurement. And this is the reason why we are all here in Vic Falls this year. And it's an honor as well to summarize what we have been talking about the past 2 days. And please pay attention attentively, because this is the reason why we are here.
Okay, so we will start by defining sustainable procurement. So we are defining sustainable procurement as the integration of economic, social, and environmental criteria in our procurement processes. So here we are going beyond the traditional commercial aspects of price, lead times, terms, etc. So it is a procurement that considers the future. And then we are looking at sustainable procurement in these 3 pillars. That is the environment, the social aspects, and the economic aspects.
So we are here to talk about what benefits accrue to the organization if we make an informed decision to go the path of sustainable procurement. We are talking about how the organization will be in a better position if it decides to proceed with sustainable procurement. So we looked at this as my colleague has said a moment ago, that we'll look at the environmental benefits, the social benefits, the economic benefits, and also other benefits which accrue to the organization or to the community or to the global world which we operate in. Like I said, it is going to be a summary. We won't give you all. We want your consultancies after this, so we'll summarize it. The benefits, like we said, they accrue from even the global level, they accrue to the regional level, they accrue to the societal level, and they accrue to the company. But we've just grouped them against environmental benefits, economic benefits, and social benefits. So under environmental, like all speakers have said, it protects our environment, the environment which we are borrowing from future generations. If we go sustainable procurement, we are protecting it so that it is available for generations to come. It also assists in sustainable sourcing of products. By this, we mean that if we protect the environment, we are guaranteed as an organization, as a nation, as an industry, to have a continued and sustained supply of our materials. It also helps to avert global warming by avoiding the depletion of the ozone layer. It also therefore averts climate change, which we are suffering from as we face ecological disasters year in, year out, season in, season out. So if we protect our environment by sustainably procuring, we are also assisting in averting the effects of climate change. Last but not least, it also assists in reduced energy consumption energy levels. On the social benefits, we agreed that if we sustainably procure, we help in the promotion of local economies, eradication of poverty, and improvement in the lives of the communities which we operate in. We also said it assists the organization to attract and retain skilled and qualified employees. This arises from the fact that everyone wants to be associated with someone who's doing the right thing, the good thing. So if we sustainably procure, which we believe is the right thing, employees are willing to stay with us and employees are willing to come and join us. Last but not least, on social impacts as well, it helps in the easy acceptance of company products and services because of various movements, consumer movements across the globe. If we sustainably buy, our products would easily be acceptable by the markets. And on the economic benefits, it obviously assists to build a good corporate image and goodwill. It assists in lowering whole life costs of our products or of equipment which we buy. It also assists in the reduction of our energy costs and overall operating costs, which helps improve the bottom line. It's a part of managing our risks as well. We tend to manage risk better if we sustainably buy. Like I said earlier, it's easy to access international markets because our products are easily acceptable. It also promotes the production of eco-friendly products, which again comes back to assist in preservation of our environment. And lastly, it also assists us in the production of good quality and durable products. I hand over to my colleague to take us in the second chapter of our presentation, which will look at how then can we roll out the sustainable procurement within our various organizations. Over to you.
All right. So again, in how then people will ask, how then can we incorporate sustainable procurement practices in our day-to-day operations? Throughout the discussions, we've had questions from colleagues regarding the practicability of this concept of sustainable procurement, with others saying it's just, what can I say, a concept that is not practical. So we are going to assist in how we can incorporate these in our procurement operations. So we'll start with the environmental. So in our sourcing criteria, we can require suppliers to provide, for example, material data sheets, their disposal processes, especially for organizations that deal with industrial products, industrial chemicals. That way we can request for products, at least that have got less toxins to the environment. We can request for also certifications from various bodies such as the ISO 14001, the OSHA's Occupational Health and Safety 45001. We can request that as part of our sourcing criteria and evaluation criteria. I think one of our colleagues from ZPC actually said that they are incorporating this when they source for their oils and products alike. And also we need to be innovative when we are defining our specifications. I believe as procurement people, we are also involved on the specifications definition together with our technical teams. So we can also advocate for products that are energy efficient. We can for example, in construction projects nowadays, we are now requesting for buildings that maximize on natural lighting. Also, for those especially that are in the manufacturing sector, we can advocate for procurement of recycled materials. We can partner with our suppliers such that we can recycle. And then we move on to the social. And these are issues to do with recognition of human rights, abolition of modern day slavery, etc. In terms of modern slavery, we can include under our terms and conditions as well as under our sourcing criteria to make bidders sign commitments to employ in fair labor practices. For example, we have the United Nations, they're actually making use of this practice. And I know some will ask, how then will you go and inspect? You can do audits to the suppliers, to their supply chains, look beneath the supply chains in terms of how are they engaging their labor? Are they not using child labor? Are they not paying wages that are below the minimum wage rates? Also, in terms of the social, we can also be inclusive in our procurement. This may seem like a far-fetched principle, but actually we can do this, for example, in the Public Procurement Act to those that are in the public sector. We have section 29 of the Act as well as section 8 of the regulations. These ones actually give us a margin. We can even put a margin of domestic preference to certain groups, maybe domestic preference, let's say in the case of international bidding, we can give a margin up to about 15% for goods and up to about 7.5% for construction works. When we are employing these international organizations, we can request them to maybe employ a local labor or to have a certain percentage of their materials procured locally from Zimbabwe, not for them to import products from their countries. We can also in our contracts request for, especially when we're doing community projects or for example, at my organization, sometimes we engage in the construction of base stations. So we always indicate in our sourcing criteria that bidders must employ local communities for casual labor. There is no need to bring casual labor from Harare, for example, when you are doing works in maybe Chikwalakwala, in Beitbridge there. So by so doing, we are also empowering our local communities. We can, and this you can always work with the local leadership, such as the sabukus, the chiefs, to help in that regard of getting local labor. So we can also determine the extent of subcontracting to domestic companies when we engage our international counterparts. And then now we could go on, but because of time. And also for certain categories of purchases as organization, we can say we are committing to this category of purchase to employ only local communities. For example, a colleague from ZCDC, a former colleague from ZCDC once shared that for all their canteen supplies, the vegetables, etc., they procure only from local farmers. No need to get to import maybe from neighboring countries or from big companies. That way they are giving back to the communities in which they are operating in. And now we move on to the economic aspects. How then can we incorporate this? And by sustainable procurement, remember, we're just not looking at the cost, at the acquisition cost. So what we can do, we can look at whole life costs of products. Instead of just looking at the initial capital acquisition costs, we can look at the total cost of ownership. That is the maintenance cost, the cost of replacement of consumables. Look at the recurring cost. I can give a very practical example of, let's say, printers. When we're procuring printers, you find that most of the times we just look at the acquisition cost of the printer. But have we looked at the cost of the cartridges, of the toner cartridges, as well as their life cycle? So we've got banks. Banks have really embedded this principle well. You find that we've got banks like the FBC Bank. They look at the cost of the consumables. That is the toner cartridges, not just the acquisition cost. Most companies in the IT sector, they actually make their money not from the equipment, but from the consumables, which they know that you always come back for. Another example is also on internet connectivity. Let's say for VSAT or fiber connectivity. When we are procuring, sometimes you find that we just look at the cost of installation. But the real catch is on the recurring cost, the subscriptions, the monthly subscriptions. So when we are procuring, we need to look at that. And how can we do that? We can include methods such as the NPV, other statistical methods, costing methods. Now that financial aspect comes back in again. And also we may need to look at own or rent decisions. On certain procurements, we may not need to really incur the capital costs, but we can look at, what is profitable? Should we own this or should we rent? And then finally, on the economic aspect, we'll look at quality. Sustainable procurement also includes the procurement of quality products, and how can we incorporate that? We can incorporate quality standards in our sourcing criteria. We can request for certification such as the Beru Veritas certification to ensure that we get products that meet at least international quality standards. Oh, sorry, and then one last one, we need to pay suppliers on time. We cannot expect, we cannot have high expectations on suppliers when we pay them 6 months later. We cannot say we need you to pay a fair wage, maybe above the, or maybe at the NEC rates when we pay them 6 months later, because there are factors that come in such as inflation and the like. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause. So there you have it, building the business case for sustainable procurement. May we have your comments? Let's do this quickly. Comments, questions? Yes, Mr. Chairman, please go ahead.
All right, thank you very much, Tim, for a good presentation. Mine is just a comment and an addition even to what these colleagues have highlighted in terms of some practical ways that organization can incorporate sustainability. Take, for example, one good example is the packaging materials, that especially for those organizations that are doing packaging materials. One good thing that organization can now do is to make use of biodegradable materials on their packaging. When they do packaging, talk, for example, when you look at the Nando's packaging that they use, it's biodegradable, that khaki paper that they are now using instead of the more like the lunchbox K-lights type that they were using prior or before. And also the government, I think Ministry of Health, through the Public Health Act, they've also enacted, or they've also banned the use of K-lights, and now promoting the use of recycled, you know, those plastic like lunch boxes that are made of PET plastic, which can easily be recycled. When you also look at the health at global level, in one of the projects that I was also involved, when we're talking with manufacturers of drugs at global level, especially the ARVs, I think if you go around our public hospital, you'll see a lot of small cardboard boxes, this small size, dumped outside the gates. So one thing that we also did was to discuss with these manufacturers of these products to say, can you use biodegradable paper whenever you pack your drugs, especially the high-use drugs such as ARVs and anti-TB drugs that then patients have to collect on a regular basis. So these are some of the sustainable measures that are being implemented practically on a global level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's hear from others. Any hands up? Any contribution, comment, question? Yes, please go ahead.
I would say to all those that don't believe that this is important, that the younger generation are going to eat you for lunch, because the younger generation, the Generation X's, are looking at these things in a far more concentrated way to make sure that they're looking at where you procure from, where do you get the product from, which companies are you supporting, which SMEs are you uplifting, and they're making purchasing decisions based on those things. The older generation, and I would include myself in the older generation, I'm not as focused on that, but I can assure you that my younger brother, who's only 5 years younger than me, often calls me out on it and says, do you even know where this thing comes from? Do you know who they're supporting? The younger generation with the purchasing power, and we all know that Africa has a young population. If we don't focus on these things, if you look at that last line of the CIPS purpose, at the bottom there, it talks about a sustainable society. We need to do this in order to actually have a sustainable society. So I would encourage all of those that think it's a bit of a fad and it will blow over to re-examine and to re-look at it, because I think your businesses will suffer as a result of not focusing on this.
Thank you. Any other comment or question, anyone? Right, over to you. You can give us your closing remarks and also respond to the comments that have come through.
Thank you, Master of Ceremony. I think what Preston has said is really illustrated and given practical examples of what is happening as people endeavor to protect the environment. And I think the examples which he has given are really what is happening on the ground. And on what Craig has said, I just wanted to add that I've got also a young brother who looks at everything which we have bought and says, do you know these things comes from Brazil? It means we're exporting our jobs to Brazil. And I think it's within our power, the procurement professionals in this room, to really ask our questions and say, these materials which we are buying for our various organizations, how are they supporting the preservation of the environment? How are they sustaining the existence of our company? How are they sustaining the existence of our communities and country at large? I think both comments are well noted. Thank you. And you can give the closing remarks.
Okay, so I just wanted to add that while we addressed how we can incorporate these practices on an operational level, on a policy level, maybe as a profession, we may need to push up, to push for policy level incorporation of SP practices. For example, you find that in the UK, they pushed for the Modern Slavery Act to make it not such a voluntary aspect, but to make it compulsory. And also at organizational level, we can link our sustainable procurement principles with key performance indicators such that this is actually measurable. And we can also use best practices. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We've got countries that are leading in this. So we can use best practices as our baseline for development of sustainable procurement practices at organizational level. And lastly, I just want to say to the facilitator, 50 points to group 6 for participating.
All groups have participated, but thank you for trying. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you very much, our panelists. Right.